I see my name says Maisha Smith. Is that something I should worry about?
Yes. We're working on getting that changed.
Hey, Tom. Hi, Rhonda.
Hey, I miss you.
And Gov, I know you know Kris Brown, the CEO and president for Brady. She's on with us as well.
Hello, Governor Hickenlooper. Senator
See you.
Hickenlooper, so great to see you.
Nice to see you.
And of course, you know Val, our new state chapter lead for our new chapter here in Colorado. She's going to be our new chapter lead for a new chapter in Colorado.
Here we go. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get things started. Starting to see a lot of people joining us this evening. Thanks so much for being here. Welcome. My name is Val Beck, and I am the new Colorado chapter lead for the Brady campaign. We are united against gun violence. And tonight we have a great panel here with us. I am really excited to have the honor of introducing Kris Brown. Kris is the president of Brady and combines a lifelong background in policy, law, grassroots activism, and really brings her expertise to forge the direction of the organization's programs, the Brady programs, to ensure the successful impact of its national and field assets. She's a veteran of gun violence prevention work. Miss Brown, that's in my notes. Kris started her career on Capitol Hill working for Representative Jim Moran, advocating for the bill that would eventually become the groundbreaking Brady bill, which requires background checks on federally licensed gun sales, which did. Go ahead, Kris.
Thank you, Val. I appreciate that so much, and we're thrilled to have you leading our work in Colorado. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kris Brown, the president of Brady. For those of you unfamiliar with Brady, we are one of the oldest gun violence prevention organizations in the country. And of course, we're named for Jim and Sarah Brady, who fought for years, 6 years and 7 votes, ultimately, to pass common sense gun violence prevention laws in Congress. I'm just so excited to join you tonight to mark the formation of our latest chapter in Colorado. I'm thrilled that we are joined by such amazing, strong champions for gun violence prevention in Colorado, from Senator John Hickenlooper to State Representative Tom Sullivan to State Senator Rhonda Fields and Tom Mauser. There is so much important work being done by many activists and organizations here in Colorado. We are excited to continue our work with them here in the state with our newest chapter and state executive committee. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Val again for championing and spearheading all of our work for Brady and getting Brady Colorado off on the right foot. It is important to acknowledge that so many of our experts here tonight came to this work because they were personally impacted by gun violence. This is an epidemic and it affects every single one of us. Very sadly, some of us far more than others. As we've seen in the past few weeks, and terribly in Colorado in particular, that work is more important than ever. I think everyone listening tonight is aware of the recent spate of mass shootings that have gripped headlines, and all of us, our hearts and our thoughts still are with the community in Boulder. But just as important, I think we are all also aware of the many tragedies in our own communities that don't receive national attention. We know that gun violence is a public health crisis and it claims more than 100 lives every day. More than 100 lives every day, more than 40,000 a year, more than 80,000 injured. In Colorado, 846 people died from gun-related injuries in 2019, the last year for which we have complete CDC data. That's nearly 1,000 families who today are still mourning the loss of a loved one to this crisis. But we know that we can end gun violence. We can. It's a public health epidemic. Let's treat it like that. Activists like those who have joined us tonight and those who have been working hard in Colorado for years have shown us just that. Just today, Governor Polis signed 2 bills that will help reduce gun violence in the state. One, requiring individuals whose guns were lost or stolen to report them missing. And the second, we talked about this before with one of the leaders on this issue, requiring safe storage of firearms in the home. That's real progress, and it will save lives. And it's thanks to dedicated and concerned activists and to understanding and motivated public servants, those we have with us tonight, and all of you, that we are in this position. And with that, I will turn things over to our Vice President of Organizing and Colorado resident, Maisha Fields, who will kick off more of tonight's discussion. Maisha?
Thank you so much, Kris. It is an honor and a privilege to work with you and to be associated as a key leader with the Brady campaign, specifically as a survivor. Tonight is very special to me. I am a Colorado resident. I am a native of Colorado, and I have experienced firsthand gun violence in our community that shook me when my brother died on June 20th of 2005. But I am not alone. I'm joined tonight with other survivors who have given me wind when I was weak, who have shown me a pathway to what real hope and progress looks like to eliminating gun violence. And so I'm so honored to have the champions, the courageous leaders for gun violence prevention in Colorado. Senator John Hickenlooper, Representative Tom Mauser, Representative Tom Sullivan, and of course, Tom Mauser. And most importantly, my mother, Senator Rhonda Fields. So before we begin, I'd like for us to enter into a moment of silence. Today is April 19th. It's the day before the Columbine shooting. And for many of us who are residents of Colorado and longtime natives of Colorado, we can remember where we were on April 20th, when we learned that someone walked into Columbine High School and murdered 12 children and 1 teacher. So I'd like to begin with a moment of silence for Columbine, for Chuck E. Cheese, for the Aurora movie theater shooting, for the victims in Boulder, for people who have died in communities like my brother, Javad Marshall Fields and Vivian Wolf. And so with that, let us close our eyes and give 5 seconds to honor their lives and this movement. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being hopeful in this movement. Thank you for deciding that enough is enough. We're so excited to launch this chapter here in Colorado because Colorado knows how to giddy up and get things done. And so with that, I want to welcome you all to our kickoff campaign, where we are going to be looking at and addressing gun violence in Colorado. And we're doing that with the people on this panel, and we're doing it through community. So I want to welcome my good friend, Val Beck, a phenomenal leader, a city council member of Wheat Ridge, a woman who has children in schools who have had to do lockdown drills. Someone upon the last, when we got the shooting in Boulder, called me within an hour and said, we must do something. How can I help? I'm so excited that she's helping to pull together a diverse, inclusive team of people who are willing to hit the ground running and make sure that we do our very best in Colorado to eliminate gun violence. Val?
Thanks, Maisha. And we're so fortunate to have your leadership in Colorado on this issue and in this space. And we're so fortunate that as we build our team here in Colorado, you're going to be here with us, and you'll be the wind in our sails as we push forward and get great work done together. I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping here. We're going to kick off our question and answer portion with our panelists. All of the questions were submitted prior to our event this evening. And so I will be going through those questions and asking them to specific panelist members or to the panelists as all of, and I'll give that specific order. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. But before I do that, I wanted to just let folks know that if you'd like to find out more on how you can get involved with Brady and our new Colorado chapter, you can text message Brady Co to 877-877. So I'm going to just say that one more time. Text Brady Co to 877-877. I'm going to get started by introducing our panelists briefly. So I'm going to start by introducing Tom Mauser. On April 20th, 1999, Columbine High School in Colorado came under attack from two of its own when two student gunmen killed 13 and wounded 23 before turning their guns on themselves. Tom Mauser's 15-year-old son, Daniel, was among the children murdered. And Tom is now an activist in the gun violence prevention movement and is here with us this evening. Thank you so much for being here, Tom. Also on our panel, we have Representative Tom Sullivan. Tom Sullivan is a member of the Colorado State House of Representatives representing the 37th District in Arapahoe County. He was elected as the first Democrat to represent House District 37 in 2018, and Representative Sullivan is a tireless advocate for the gun safety movement and is known for his advocacy and legislation following the death of his son, Alex, in the 2012 Aurora, Colorado shooting. Thank you so much for being here this evening, Representative Sullivan. Next, I would like to introduce Senator John Hickenlooper. It's really nice to call you Senator. Senator Hickenlooper is our newly elected senator from Colorado. As we all know, he previously served as the mayor of Denver and as our governor from 2011 to 2019. As governor, he introduced universal background checks and helped to ban high-capacity magazines following the 2012 Aurora theater shooting. Thank you, Senator, for being here. And then I'd like to introduce Senator Rhonda Fields. She represents District 29 in our state, and she was also the first African-American woman to serve State House District 42 and also as Speaker Pro Tem. Senator Fields entered politics after working for victims' rights after her son, Javad Fields, and his fiancee, Vivian Wolf, were murdered in relation to witnessing a mass shooting. 5280 has ranked her as one of the 50 most powerful women in the Denver metro area, saying she has gained the type of respect that politicians dream about for being a courageous leader in the gun violence prevention movement. So thank you so much, Senator, for being here with us today. So let's go
Thank
ahead and get started. So this first question is a question for the entire panel. Each of you will have about 3 minutes to answer. And so here's the question. We have a lot of survivors with us tonight. I think that what is so impressive about each of your individual stories is the way you have channeled your pain into purpose to fight for change at various levels and in different ways to prevent other families and communities from going through what you have experienced. It couldn't have been easy. Can you tell us how you found your way? And I'd like to start with you, Mr. Mauser.
Sure. You know, for me, it was certainly a way that I could honor my son, because he had said to me, he'd asked me at the dinner table, did I know there were loopholes in the Brady bill? And then he was killed with a gun that was purchased through a loophole in the Brady bill. That certainly gave me the initial impetus. But you know what really advanced it a lot was within weeks of the tragedy Columbine, I find myself in Washington, D.C. At a few different events and met other people who had lost loved ones. I felt strength from them. I felt like, you know, as unfortunate it was, I was with these people who were in this club that nobody would want to belong to, but they, you know, they gave me some comfort. I learned from them and felt that I could move on from that and show that devotion to this cause.
Thank you. Representative Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we still, we had a trial to go through. So it was, you know, with everything that happened right away. And then we had the theater being rebuilt and got involved, speaking out with that. I remember talking to the governor at the time, talking about the theater, what was going to happen with it, talking with Mayor Hogan about what was going to happen. We became active with, you know, making sure that it got going. And then we had the trial and was speaking out. And when the trial was all over, and we had been working since 2013, when we passed some common sense gun legislation here in the state of Colorado that Senator Fields was involved in. I saw that, being on the outside really wasn't enough. I needed to get on the inside to really help her with some of the legislation that was happening down there. And that's what I did. It was just, started to do the work, and, I'm not afraid of the work, and, knocking doors, making phone calls, raising money, doing everything that needed to be done. And that's the only way you can do it on a topic like this. And then when we win, you need to prove to other people that in Colorado now, this is a topic that we can win in. As you said, we were the first Democrats to ever win this seat. And this was a stronghold for Republicans. And we won. We've now held it a second time. They even tried to recall us. We beat that back. So this is a topic that we can win on in the state of Colorado.
Thank you, Representative. I'm going to go to Senator Fields.
Yes, I think for me, it was, you just never want to mess with somebody's baby, okay? As a mom, we want to protect our kids. And so for me, what activated me was somebody murdered my son. And I just wasn't going to have it. And so I think what happened in my case, that the offenders underestimated the love that a mother has for her child. They underestimated the love that I had for my son. And so right away, I went to work to try to do what I could do to solve this murder, because I didn't know if I could live with not knowing who killed him and making sure that the police did their job. But because of the progressive police work, they solved my son's murder in 8 weeks. And they had to do, they had to go out of state to get one of the guys to bring him back. So I think this is important. Just don't mess with nobody's baby, okay? Because that's when I got my voice. That's when I wanted to lend voice to victims' rights. And that's how I got justice for my son. And I'm still working for justice, not just for him, but for all crime victims. So don't mess with Maisha either.
Yeah, know that. Thanks, Senator. That's awesome. Senator Hickenlooper, I have a question for you. When you were governor, you signed a number of life-saving pieces of legislation. Thank you. Now that you are in the U.S. Senate, there seems to be a broader conversation about building a consensus around policies like H.R. 8, a universal background check bill that you are a co-sponsor of. It was not easy then, and it took time to get these laws passed in Colorado. I'm wondering if those experiences have given you insight in what you will help find progress as Congress considers these life-saving policies. And you're on mute, Senator.
Luckily, you couldn't hear the swear word I said when I realized I was on mute. Before I answer the question, let me just say how honored I am to be with you all, and Tom Mauser, especially the day before the 22nd anniversary. Val, your original question was, how do we find our way in this? And it's funny, my son graduated from high school last spring, and I couldn't help but think, just because of the exposure to all of your stories, how lucky he was that he got through high school in such dangerous times. And I only found my way because of all of your stories. And Tom Sullivan from the group of people from the Aurora shooting to to Claire Davis, Michael and Desiree Davis, who lost their beloved and adopted daughter. Each story brings you to it, to the cause, to the mission. So I've been out quietly talking to Republicans and Democrats, building friendships. My style, little friend of all the world. We're trying to find 60 votes. And I think we start with background checks. It's somewhere between 80 and 90% approval in the United States, depending on who you talk to, which poll you look at. But I think that, background checks is a great foundation, but things like red flag laws, where you can really, on at least some occasions, you can intercede before a shooting occurs. What Governor Polis was signing today, making sure that if you've lost a gun, you've got to report it, making sure you keep your gun safety. Look at the number of suicides. I don't know what what was it, 846 deaths, I think is what Kris Brown said, gun deaths in Colorado, and how many were suicides, right? Probably, if last year, 20%. One of those things that it would be too hard and too draining to do this work if it weren't that the stakes are so high. And again, that's why I feel such respect and gratitude for both Toms and Senator Fields. You perhaps, you were dealt with directly at that level, and then Maisha was, for so long been a partner in this work with me. So anyway, I'm very excited to have the Brady group in Colorado, and we'll do everything I can to make sure that we continue to expand the mission. And again, it's all about people and how many people we can bring together.
Thanks, Senator.
Val, could I add something here?
Yes, please.
I want to add this to, when I first got into this issue, it was 10 days after Columbine. I had not done anything publicly. I showed up at the protest of the NRA convention that was being held in Denver, showed up to a group of 10,000 people, carried a sign, didn't expect to speak. They asked if I would speak, and I said, I didn't come here planning to do that. I said, were there any other Columbine parents here? They said, no. And I said, well, then I have to speak. And I think that's what we victims often do. We stand in for other people. We know we've met other people who've been through this kind of tragedy, but we know they can't all speak up for any number of reasons. So that's what we do. We feel that we're speaking for many of those other victims. And I think we likewise have to count on people in the public to also speak up, because there are some people who were reluctant to speak out on this issue, but the more people that do speak out on it and get involved, the more success we can have.
Thanks for that. And it actually ties in really nicely to the next question that I was going to direct towards you.
I intended that.
So I'm gonna go move on with this next question, where we can explore that a little bit more. I wanted to acknowledge that tomorrow is the 21st anniversary of the shooting at Columbine, where your son Daniel was murdered. And like you, Senator Fields, Representative Sullivan, and thousands of other Coloradans, I've realized that I can no longer stand on the sidelines. What is the best way for people like me, or the hundreds of people who've called in and dialed into the Zoom call tonight, can get more involved? What can we do?
I'm reminded of a story that happened back in 2000, when we were trying to close the gun show loophole in Colorado. And the bill to close that loophole in the state legislature was sponsored by Representative Ken Gordon. And he was at a meeting, some kind of event in the community, and a woman approached him and knew that he was the sponsor of the bill. And she kind of very forcefully said to him, Representative Gordon, is this bill going to pass? Are we going to close that gun show loophole? And he said, it doesn't look like we have the votes, unfortunately. And she said, well, why not? Coloradans support this. Why can't we close that loophole? And he said, ma'am, let me ask you a question. Do you know who your representative is? Your state representative and state senator? And she said, no, I don't. And he said, ma'am, that's why it's not going to pass. We have to start at the basic level. A lot of people don't know who the representatives are. They don't know who is representing them. They have to, that's a starting point for many people. They have to make that contact. They have to make their voice heard. So many people think that letter, that call won't make a difference. And it really can, because they don't really hear from people as much as you think. They tend to hear from people when there's some big high profile issue and someone starts a card sending campaign and they get deluged and they kind of expect that. But when they hear from people, or ordinary people, writing a letter in particular, it can really have an impact. And then they have to realize that there are other people out there like them, and they've got to join together with those other folks, because there is more power in getting involved in an organization and speaking through that organization.
Thanks. And one of the great things about Brady is that it provides the support and some of the trainings that you're going to need in order to go do some of that work. So, just the data, the numbers, so that you can talk about this issue and have the facts with you when you're advocating and doing that work. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add on how folks can get involved on this issue?
I think it's important that we don't sit on the sidelines and don't be, hanging out on the margins of society as it relates to gun violence. That we all want to be safe. We want to be safe in our churches. We want to be safe in our grocery stores, in our churches, and we all have to take responsibility for that. So that means we have to be involved in some capacity to do whatever we can to keep guns out of the hands of people that may be wanting to commit homicide or suicide. So we have to find a way to stay plugged in and to lend voice to this topic. And I think Brady's a good opportunity for people to do that.
Great, thanks. Thanks. I have a question for Representative Sullivan. Representative Sullivan, you sponsored the bill that established Colorado's Extreme Risk Protection Order law, which went into effect about a year ago. For those who don't know, tell us more about ERPO or ERPO laws and how they can address and reduce risk. Can you talk about how extreme risk laws help people in crisis stay safe? And importantly, most importantly, how advocates here in Colorado can help to ensure this law is fully implemented and used to prevent further instances of gun violence.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was just one of the part, they had tried it the year before I got there in 2018. We had a split legislature at the time, so it passed in the House, didn't pass in the Senate. We were able to get the votes in the Senate. I got there, worked with now Speaker Garnett on it. And what it does is it temporarily takes firearms away from somebody who is deemed to be a danger to themselves or others. And that is the strong point. It can be put together by family members or by law enforcement. And what it is most of the time, it's someone who is familiar. Law enforcement knows about this person, has been to this person's house. It's named after Zachary Parrish, who was the deputy who was murdered because they were trying to get into this guy's house on New Year's Eve. And they had been to his house many times. They didn't have a mechanism like this to remove his firearms before. So that guy was able to, shoot on everybody, fired several hundred rounds and murdered Zachary Parrish. What is so important about it and is that we passed it. The first year that we had it in the state, we filed 113 petitions, far below what we thought that we were going to. We thought it'd probably be somewhere around 150. We did 113, not this whole, everybody's going to be doing it all the time. The scare tactic that the NRA and the Rocky Mountain gun owners tried to put out there. It has been effective, but we need to do better with it, is to educate not only the public with it, but also to educate the different police agencies out there. Some of them you can see, like in Metro Denver, they use it. It's like one of the first things that they think about when they're in that situations. Some of our more rural communities, it's much further down. Got to do a better job with that, and to let people know, like in the instance up in Boulder, if those parents, if other family members had known the problems that individual had, they could have filed that petition and possibly done something about it. So we're still working on it. We're going to try to get an education system out there. Look forward to working with Brady on that to get that information out to the public.
Thanks. Senator Fields, real quick, I'm going to ask you a question, but before I do that, I want to just remind folks that if you want to get involved with Brady campaign, you can text message to 877-877-BRADY-CO. send a text message and we'll get you signed up and get you activated, get you out there. We're going to put you to work. Senator Fields, you have been a courageous leader in the gun violence prevention movement. You over time have turned your pain into purpose, and you've helped reshape reform in gun violence prevention. How did you find your voice as a survivor and learn how to lean into utilizing your power and your position? And how did you do that to work proactively to end gun violence, and specifically around firearm suicide and domestic violence and community violence?
You know, I didn't find my voice until after I lost my son. So it was like after I was like 55 years old or something like that is when I found my voice, because I was so busy just working. And I never really lent my voice to issues like violence, because I didn't think it was going to happen to me. But then it did happen to me. And what I learned is that I wasn't alone. When it first happened, I didn't realize how many people were really impacted by gun violence. And so those who have been harmed by crime, you know, I was just, people were like calling me and asking me, well, how do you do this? And how do you approach this? And how do I get the police involved? And so it was because of the community really punching holes in my own darkness, my own depression, pulling me out of that situation, asking me for support to help them deal with a similar scenario that you know, I really didn't have any experience with. So it was just lending voice to those kinds of concerns that I really didn't even know I had that inside me until someone says, well, we want you to be our spokesperson, or we want you to help us, and we want you to do this, you want to do that. But it was really someone else seeing potential in me that I didn't see in myself. And so that's how I found my voice, is somebody gave me permission to speak. And that's how it happened for me. You know, if someone said, we think you have a voice here. We think you need to run for office. Or we think you need to do this, you need to do that. And I would, you know, I would challenge that. Me? Why me? And then the more I talked to people, they were able to validate and give me confidence that I didn't even see in myself. So I say that to the folks who are listening, you don't have to wait for someone to tell you you can be a leader. You don't have to wait for someone to tell you to lend voice. I mean, we see inequities in every corner of our society. So my advice to all of you is to lend voice, get involved, get engaged, stay plugged in, and let's make this world a better place. So that would be my advice.
That would be your pep talk.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to do a lightning round now. And I have one question, and everyone will get a minute to answer. And I would say it's not really that easy of a question, but the question is, how do we unite the country to take action and not sides to end gun violence? I am going to start with Tom Mauser.
I think one thing we can unite people around, I think they're already united around, is passing universal background checks at the national level. And you have over 90% of the public supporting that. How can you not act on that? To me, right now, what we have is essentially a tyranny by the minority, that they're holding this up. They held it up when Republicans held the Senate, and now even they'll still hold it up. And I think we can convince people that we can really get started on this issue by passing universal background checks. That's the minimum we can and must do in this country.
Thanks. Representative Sullivan.
Well, I would start with, when I speak, I ask people to see themselves, in me. Look in the mirror in the morning and try to imagine you in someone else's shoes that day. I mean, that's why you look and you read the names and you hear the stories and that type of stuff. You have to have the empathy and compassion, and you need to get out there and be involved in this because it keeps getting closer and closer to us. And what happened to the three of us here, it's only by the grace of God that it didn't happen to you. So get involved with us.
And
Senator,
yeah, I think for me, it's kind of complementing what has already been said. And I think it just, I'm sick and tired of the gun violence. I'm sick and tired of it. And it's like a day or two doesn't go by when someone's not impacted by gun violence. So this should not be a political issue, but it is. But we need to make sure that we have the political will and the courage to be involved, because we want to be safe in our communities. And to be silent is just not an option for us right now, because it's happening too frequently, it's happened too often. And so we need to do something about it. And I believe Senator Hickenlooper, we need Congress to act now. And so we need them to pass that background check bill and whatever else we can do. But Colorado can only govern within inside our borders. And we've done a really good job passing legislation. We have more work to do. Personally, I'd like to see a ban on assault weapons. There's no need to have that type of weapons in our community. I think that should be the next level we take our gun reform measures too in the state of Colorado. I think we need to ban assault weapons.
okay, Senator Hickenlooper, do you need me to repeat the question? I think you're on mute again, Senator.
I heard feedback, so I put myself on mute, knowing that I would forget to unmute myself.
Added time in the schedule to make sure people could get off mute.
I think that obviously the Congress has to pass universal background checks. But I continue to, the frequency of shootings is, if we were terrorists trying to design a way to hurt our country, we couldn't design a better form of terror than to make our kids afraid to go to school, or make our neighbors fearful of going shopping or going to worship. And it's at that point where we've allowed ourselves to do everything wrong, and we terrorize ourselves in ways that we should learn. We should learn from the experience that so much of this is copycats. Again, we've got to pass background checks, but we should discipline ourselves and shame the media. You can't make a law and limit the media, but when they make shooters into two-bit celebrities, and they take the place where these tragedies come and they make them a center of attention, you're almost asking for more trouble, I think, in other cities. People see that media. And I think that we've got to get to the point where we have a concerted effort on so many levels to reach out and do just what Brady's doing. Get bigger networks of people to try to find different ways of communicating that empathy that Representative Sullivan talked about, of getting people to imagine walking in someone's shoes who's lost a child or a family member, a parent in gun violence. I can't think of anything where I feel so that we haven't done enough. We've done so much and worked so hard, and we haven't. I feel like we're just on the verge of getting real traction, and to be able to have as a country rise up. We've got the law in place, right? The 1934 Firearms Act allows us to make decisions about what is truly dangerous for society. Well, let's roll up our sleeves and get people to pay attention to, make sure that everyone knows who their representative is.
Step one. That's a good step one. Thanks, Senator. So I'm going to ask Kaylee to come on screen. Kaylee, are you there? Can you hear us?
Hi there, I'm here. Sorry, I was having troubles with my.
I wanted to introduce Kaylee. Kaylee is going to give us a question, give a question to the panel here. She's a leader from Brady Colorado's youth arm, Team Enough.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. This whole panel has been great. My question is, what's the most important advice you would give to a new advocate in the gun violence prevention movement? And anyone is free to answer whenever you're ready.
I'll start off.
Okay.
For me, I don't think we have to say too much to people about the consequences of gun violence. They understand that part. I think some of them are conflicted, because most people are in the middle. They basically support the Second Amendment, but they understand the need for regulations and for limits on that. The conflict they often face is they're hearing arguments from the people on the other side. I advise people, get familiar with the things that the other side is going to say and be prepared to answer them. When I speak to people, I present the arguments of my opponents and then I answer them. And I say, this is what you can say when you face those arguments. Because those people are, I think, sometimes in conflict. Well, gee, my neighbor is saying they're going to take my guns away. No, we're not. There's no bills being introduced that are going to take your guns away. We're talking about common sense kinds of things that we need to do to protect ourselves. So be prepared to answer those questions, those issues, those arguments from the opponents.
And on that, one of the things I would say is to make yourself present. Actually be there, be in front, stand up, and when your time comes, be ready to speak up. It's those types of things that you need to do. You can't be on the sidelines. You can't be in the back, nodding your head. Yes, you agree. You know what? If you agree, then step up next to those speakers and let people know that's right. That's what we're going to do. And it makes an impact, and it gives others strength to see that you can speak up, that you will stand up, that you're present. And that's really where our strength will come from.
And just to add on to what's already been said is just speak, even if your voice is shaky. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. And so even if your voice is shaking or you're hesitant to lend voice, the more you practice using your voice, the better you become at it. So even though your voice is shaky, that's okay. It'll get stronger over time.
Mine's been a little shaky tonight. I'm a little nervous, everybody. Senator Hickenlooper, did you want to go with Kaylee's question?
I'm not sure I can add very much except to say that especially young people should recognize the power that they have by their youth. In other words, you talk about empathy, they're the ones who, when they talk about putting themselves in the shoes of kids in school during a shooting or kids who've been shot. I mean, I've had a couple of young people bring out tears are falling down my face as they describe their ordeal. And I think many young people underestimate how powerful they can be.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for being here, Kaylee, and thanks for everything that you do. I'm going to invite Maisha to come back on screen. We have completed all of our questions that have been submitted. We have a lot of other questions that were submitted that we tried to encompass those questions into the questions that we provided tonight, but we will be following up with our panelists with some of those questions. And then as a way for us to stay engaged with those who participated tonight, we'll be sending some of those answered questions out via email and through text message. So it's a way for us to continue to keep everybody in the loop on what's going on. So I think we are ready to close out, and I'm going to let Maisha do that. But before we do, one more plug here. Please text message 877-877 Brady Co. and join us here with the Colorado chapter. We are ready to make our voices heard and get to work. And I just want to give a quick thank you to our panelists. It's such an honor to be here with all of you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much,
All
Val.
you do. Thanks, Val. Nicely done.
Thank you, Governor Hickenlooper. Thank you,
You bet.
Val. You've been a phenomenal host. We're so excited that you are going to be and are leading as our chapter chair and our state chair for Colorado. We did a phenomenal job tonight. We had over 150 people who attended this town hall. And the reason that each and every one of you showed up is because we have all been intimately impacted by gun violence. In fact, I believe that each and every one of us have said, enough is enough. This is the greatest public health issue that we are facing in this lifetime, next to COVID. And as our communities begin to open back up, we are going to realize a different realm of a public health and mental health crisis that we have yet to know. Now is that the time that we continue to push forth common sense gun measures that over 80% of people have support, like background checks, magazine limits. And even tonight, I was so glad to hear Senator Fields talk about an assault weapon ban. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for using your voice, your power, your position to make sure that we eliminate gun violence. We don't have to have more than 100 people dying from preventable gun violence. We need to know how guns are getting into our community. We need to provide trauma services, which is why Brady is so excited that Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris, our vice president, moved forth with a $5 billion gun package for gun prevention. This money is going to go to the heart of communities, survivors like myself, Senator Representative Fields, Senator Fields, Representative Tom Sullivan and Tom Mauser, and all of you on the call who may have been impacted. That will come directly to communities to address gun violence prevention. And that's the first step in making this a public health issue. Please join us. Join the movement. Use your voice to influence your local elected officials within your city councils. Val Beck, our chair, is a city councilwoman. Use your voice to influence policy if you work within hospital systems, and physicians need to learn about how to talk to people about gun violence. If you're a teacher, you may want to talk to parents about safe storage. This is our movement, and it's our time. Martin Luther King used to say there is a sense of urgency of now, but also that you could be too late. Let's not be too late, because we have been far too late for far too many victims of gun violence just this month. Join us at Brady. Thank you, Senator Rhonda Fields. Thank you, Tom Mauser. Thank you, Representative Tom Sullivan. And thank you, Governor Hickenlooper. Thank you, Kaylee. and thank you, Val. When we fight, we win. This is a winnable battle. And today we saw that Governor Polis signed 2 gun bills right here. Common sense gun approaches. So continue to fight, continue to believe, because we will do this work together. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, one and all.
Bye.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you, everyone.